else. So like SP pulled it up, it was fine for me. Or for both of us. And then for certain users, it was completely jittery. This is all going through Restream, so it was jittery. And then YouTube was fine for those same users. And yeah, like I said, SP and I couldn't recreate it. So if you're having that issue, let us know. Just kind of curious. Is anybody in the chat?
Dane's in there,
Kent.
and Kent was in there.
Oh, he's watching.
Hi.
He might not be in the chat, but he's watching.
He sent his tweet already.
Yep.
That's generally how I know when Albert's coming on there, is I get that tweet notification.
I love it.
That is not a complaint, mind you. It's just a fun observation.
I've actually talked to him about that. He does that all manually too. That's a fun fact about that.
I was wondering.
Yeah.
I thought he might be doing it automatically.
No, he goes and he says that unless it's changed since I last talked to him, it was about a year ago. He says that he's got a little template and he just goes and he changes the information and boop, out he goes.
Well, I like seeing it because I can generally tell what Kent's listening to, and I see things like Morning Stream and Chord Killers on there, and I'm like, hey, I listen to some of these too. Although I did start a new podcast this week, and I'm strangely addicted to it. Or last week, I guess.
What is it?
Because we talked about on Starling Tribune just in passing that Stephen Amell did Michael Rosenbaum's podcast. Where he does interviews with folks.
Good interview.
Like I'm super addicted to it. He's such a good interviewer. Like I've gone back and listened to the Tom Welling episode. I'm in the middle of the Morena Baccarin episode right now. It's just fascinating because they don't even go on there and be like, I'm going to talk about my product. They just start having a conversation. Yeah. And then you just learn about people and you're like, wow, this is cool.
When did Morena do her interview? Was it before or after V?
It was after V. It was I think it was in January. Let me look.
Oh, okay.
Where's my Pocket Cast app? Right here. I have my cell phone right here.
I'd be interested to get her take on.
They didn't even talk about V at all.
Oh, okay. Well,
so far,
why would you?
I went back and I listened to I don't know. I actually just skimmed a couple random episodes, just kind of jumped halfway to see if it's something I wanted to check out. And I was impressed with what I was hearing. So
it was January 14th was her appearance on Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum. Wow. It's such an interesting show because he comes on there and like with these kind of things, you expect it's all about people plugging whatever show they're on or whatever thing. And yeah, they might talk about it, but then he just starts discussing what's going on in their lives and talking about things that he's been going on in their lives and talking about how they got involved in things. It was fascinating, just a completely different perspective. And the Stephen Amell interview was really good. I thought we talked about it a little bit on the Discord.
Yeah. If you haven't had a chance to check that out and you want to hear, handling a very interesting podcast situation, but also, sorry, I've just realized something's going on here. Also handling being the interviewee in that situation, definitely worth checking out. I think that there is some real good takeaways for people across podcasting, just across life. You know, I think that it's a really interesting interview.
And kudos to Stephen Amell on that one for not being like, yeah, don't air that after. Yeah. I mean, if you haven't listened to it yet, halfway through the podcast, Stephen Amell is burnt out and he has a panic attack in the middle of the recording. He's like, I just need to get out of here. And he's freaking out. And you could tell Rosenbaum was worried about him. And then he came back like 3 weeks later to finish it and sounded like a completely different person after a vacation and a chance to decompress. And he totally owned up to it. He goes, yeah, I've had panic attacks before. He goes, there's nothing wrong with it, but they have a real honest and frank conversation about like the pressure of being the leading man on a television show for 8 years and how Stephen Amell really didn't have any breaks. Like when they would stop filming for the summer, he was going off to do like Code 8 or Ninja Turtles or all sorts of other stuff. And the dude was just out and wiped out. And you could tell on there that he was just toast, and it was raw. It was honest. And Michael Rosenbaum did an incredible job, like trying to calm him down on there and then just chatting with him afterwards about the aftermath and just being blunt about it. I really, really enjoyed it. If you were a fan of Arrow or Stephen Amell, it's well worth listening to.
Yeah, I agree.
Everyone says
a couple of people is buffering. Yeah. Kent and Albert. Are you guys watching on YouTube or Twitch?
Albert's probably on YouTube, and Kent, I imagine, is on Twitch because he's generally on the embed page. But if you guys can let us know.
Oh, is our audio still going, or is it actual buffer? Like, is it freezing or is it buffering? Like, is it actual buffer? Because I am doing some changes.
Grandfather Twitch. Oh, that's right, Albert. That's why I got a Fire Stick. I got a new 4K Fire Stick specifically so I could watch Twitch streams, specifically Steven's brother. That's yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, it's also on Apple TV
Okay.
still.
Liberty
the
Dew
Twitch
says
app.
good on YouTube. Really?
Frozen screen, rotating circle.
Where are
in
you
middle
watching,
of the screen.
Albert?
He probably can't hear us.
Oh.
I'm asking in the chat.
Okay.
It says no audio.
Well, if it's restream, it should be going everywhere,
Yeah.
right?
Can one of you guys pull it
but
up?
the YouTube ingest servers all bitch sometimes.
But this
Pardon
is
my
Twitch,
language.
I think. I think this is Twitch, though.
No, he's
I'm
on
gonna-
YouTube.
I'm going to check
Okay.
YouTube through YouTube.
Yeah, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, I'm headed there right now.
My
Just
channel,
while I
Right meow.
finish
says we're
fixing
live.
something.
videos.
It's playing for me.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Kent's
I'm
doing
hearing it.
YouTube via Chromecast.
I'm going to switch over to Twitch.
Albert says restarted working now.
Anybody else? Because I can try to kill it through Restream as well.
Finally hosted automatically. To my Twitch embed was working.
Is mine
Huh.
working?
Yeah, that's weird. I wonder what's going on with that, because like we couldn't recreate it ourselves either, and like and the fact that YouTube fixed it, like for the people on Wednesday, they went to YouTube and it fixed it. That shows that it's not my end because it's going to restream fine, right? So it's something.
I've noticed
something
that
to
YouTube, when
restream
I'm
out.
watching live streams, because I watch a lot of the sailing YouTube channels, and a lot of them are doing live streams now. There's a reason
Hey.
for that, but
Hey,
the
Liberty dude, you were watching ATGN yesterday. Was it buffering for you? Because I was using Restream as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt, but I just thought of that as another troubleshooting
Well,
point.
and I was going to mention as well, I haven't checked out ATGN for a couple weeks now, but it wasn't ATGN, sorry, Starling Tribune, a couple weeks, when was I in that chat, actually? It was when I was in the chat. It was on and off there.
2 weeks ago, I think.
But I just assumed it was something on my end because I was also, I think, editing at the same time, so. All right, is there anything else?
Sorry, I kept interrupting you there, SP. My apologies.
Kent, is it work? So it's working for Kent. Albert, do you have audio? Can you hear us now? I think we're good. All right, are you guys ready to hit record?
Oh, that's what I forgot to do, was bring up the app. 1 sec. Sorry, I'm not trying to pull a JS there. I'm like, wait. I just I effed up.
I gotta respond to JS actually.
I talked to him I sent him a message on Instagram. I was like, hey, if you're getting back into it, we should get you on as a guest sometime. He hasn't said anything back.
Well, he tagged me on the comment, and I'm gonna extend the invite, noting that he might get the boot if the hardware fails. That might be why I'm testing you right now. So
I am ready to record now too, by the way.
3, 2, 1, record.
Recording.
All right, I think we're good to go. All right, well, let's just hope this all works and see how it all goes and go from there. And if anybody has issues, just
Here's your
let me
tissue.
know.
That's what I say.
Um,
If you got issues, here's your tissue.
you got issues. Tissue. I don't know who I'm talking like, but I'm talking like somebody. All right, I think we're good. Actually, we need one more minute here. Sorry. One more minute. It's one more minute. Okay, I guess we're almost good here. Sorry, everybody. What was I going to say? There was something I was going to say on here pre-show. I don't remember. There was something I was gonna say. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. Okay, so when SP first connected, he was having camera issues. Okay, so he was having camera issues, so we couldn't see him, and he was talking to us through his speakers apparently, because I made a very inappropriate joke, to which he turns around and he goes, you're on speakers right now, and my family is in the room right next door. So everybody heard me be a perv. That's what it comes down to. Everybody's heard me be a perv. Is that news to anybody?
No.
No? Okay, that's good. That's good. Mission accomplished then. All right, this is one more thing for me to see here. All right, cool. All right, I think we're good to go.
You can tell you're thinking it when you get the woo.
All right, should we do this?
Yep.
Catching up. The old Twitch Roku channel stopped working. Oh. What was the deal with that? Okay, I missed that conversation. I was busy fixing things.
They end of lifed it.
Yeah, they did not upgrade the Twitch app on Roku, and then those that had already downloaded it, they grandfathered it, but then they ended lifed it.
That sucks.
Which is why I got and it was cheap. It was $15. I got the what do you call it? The not the Roku, but the Amazon, the Fire Stick, the 4K stick for $15 over the holidays, specifically so I could watch Twitch streams on the TV.
Nice.
So have any of you guys heard why they end of lifed it? Was it a codec issue, or is it just to try and force people to other devices?
It was a Amazon versus Roku issue.
Oh my God.
You didn't hear about this? This was huge when it came out.
I remember it happening, but I didn't remember if they tried to spin some kind of reason as to why they were doing it. If it was just, we're Amazon, we do whatever the F we want.
No, it was that people weren't playing. They were going to their own platforms, and everybody was saying, well, if you want to do this, you're going to have to watch it on Fire versus Roku. And now they're all like, with their TV streaming apps, they're like, well, we want ours on yours, so yours is on ours. Problem is, Twitch is not a TV streaming app. It's a YouTube app. And then you can watch YouTube on the Echo Show, but you have to go to the web page.
It loads Firefox to do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what this is?
Me having an epileptic seizure as it scrolls.
No, it's my warp core. It was the wrong way. Wait, it's the wrong way. There we go. That's the right way, right?
The whole Twitch thing's interesting to me, though, too, because they still have it on Apple TV. In fact, it was a relatively new addition to Apple TV and for Fire TV, like you had mentioned. Well, obviously Fire TV with Android TV. Come on, Chris. Think, brain, mouth, words.
Right. Should we go? Let's go.
Let's do it. Unique New York. You need New York. Verbal exercises.
Okay. Verbal exorcism.
Well, we could do a verbal exorcism too.
Verbal circumcision?
In Steven's case, it's the power of Android compels you. The power of Android compels you. Release the Apple. Release it. I'm Chris Farrell from the All Things Good and Nerdy podcast, a wacky weekend morning show, part of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're checking out right now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and the opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other awesome geeky shows over at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
This is the official GonnaGeek.com show. Each week, we run down the latest news and happenings in the world of geek. These are your hosts for the show, Steven, Chris, and SP.
Welcome to an all-new episode of the official GonnaGeek.com show. After a week away, I am Stephen Jondrew, and I am pleased to say that Chris Farrell's here again this week.
I tried to stream last week. No one was here, so I just put out a black screen, and I called it my own episode of Gonna Geek.
And also, SB is here. Hey, SB.
I wanted to stream, but nobody wanted to stream with me, so I didn't stream, and I think it was actually a plot against me because that meant I was forced to watch The Bachelor.
Okay, so full disclosure on this here, by the way. So last week, I got feeling terrible. Like, I woke up at like 2 a.m. between Sunday to Monday, and I ended up staying up. Every time I went to lay down, I felt like absolutely horrendous. And
The room was spinning.
and
You just put a foot down on the ground, you'll be okay.
yeah, no, I felt terrible. So I ended up just giving in because every time I laid down, I felt 1,000 times worse. So I felt terrible as I caught up on a bunch of TV shows at 2 a.m. And so I did that. But I just was feeling awful last week. And Chris and SP, they were willing to actually do this show without me. But because of some circumstances, just I'll save you the mumbo jumbo with editing and things like that. We decided it was best just to forfeit last week. But I wanted to give a shout out and a thanks to both of you and say thank you very much for supporting and being willing to go without me. I do appreciate that. And also extra thanks for making sure that my distance between Chris and my episode count didn't grow too far.
So enough of that mush. We're glad you're feeling better, Steven. More importantly, SP, after getting to watch The Bachelor, are you prepared for your Starling Tribune replacement podcast, The Bachelor Talk with SP, the not Bachelor?
No.
No? I heard you were going to do a solo recap.
If I ever was anywhere near a Bachelor podcast after last week, I am so far away. I'm like a multiverse away from doing a Bachelor podcast after last week. My God, that show is pitiful.
We're going to have a crisis, and we're going to fold you into Earth Bachelor, where you can do the official podcast of The Bachelor. We'll get you to co-host it with a former Bachelor, Bachelorette. What's the one that does football games? You can do it with that guy, and you guys can just recap what's going on. It sounds like the perfect show for you, SP. I know you're firmly in touch with what the youth's like in America.
There's already a host of podcasts on The Bachelor. Matter of fact, the big daddy of them, by the way, is Reality Steve. So if you want to know how screwed up reality TV really is, go check out Reality Steve. I'm not getting paid a cent for this, but I did have some communications back and forth with him a few years ago, and I wanted to know if what he was talking about was real. It is, and that just makes me really sad for the state of reality TV.
By the way, SP right now, he said if you want to see how screwed up it is, you want to see Reality Steve. I just want to go ahead and say right now that often the phrase is said, if you want to see something screwed up, go see Steve. Because I get that a lot myself. Just general point right there. There doesn't need to be context to it.
I'm getting the potential here for a whole spinoff of shows. We know Suncast is a big fan of Big Brother. We can have him host a Big Brother show. SP, we know Bachelor, as much as you might not like it, you're a resident expert, so you've got to cover The Bachelor. And I'll take, what's some crappy reality show? I watch Below Deck. That's my crap reality show. I will host the Below Deck show. Steven, what crappy reality show are you going to cover for the Gonna Reality TV show network? I lost it.
You know, you already gave away Big Brother, so I guess that's got to leave me with Survivor. So I got to take Survivor. So
there you go. And you guys in the chat room, come join us. Let us know what you want to host.
I wouldn't mind doing a Deadliest Catch podcast, but I don't know how much longer that show's going to be on the air.
Spoiler alert, they're going to catch some crabs this week.
Again, go see Steve. Again.
I watch it too. I'm just harassing. I like Deadliest Catch.
I mean, they lost another boat this year. That's 2 boats in 2 years.
That's scary.
It is, and there is loss of life associated with it. So there is reality there. The stories, the fights and everything, that's produced, but the actual crab catching is real.
Right.
On that note, let's go ahead and talk what we talk on this show, which is not reality TV show, but it is geeky news. Chris looks very disappointed for the audio listener right now. Like he looks very disappointed.
I wanted to talk about moonshiners on the Discovery Channel and about how it's all got to be real that they brew moonshine on TV and don't get arrested. It's got to be real. I'll take that podcast also, moonshiners, because I live in moonshine country. I live in Appalachia.
Okay, well then if we're going to go and talk Discovery programming, I'll just go ahead and say right now that I'm going to cover the Curiosity Daily podcast reality show. That's what I'm going to cover. So there you go. I understand it's a reality show.
Steven's daily recap is going to be longer than the actual show, is what we're finding out.
You're going to follow around Ashley and Cody all day, huh?
Before we do get to the news, I should just specify right now that if you didn't know that Gonna Geek Network member, former guest of the show, Cody Goff, he does do a podcast called the Curiosity Daily podcast. And it was recently announced, I think it was like 2 weeks ago. So we haven't had a chance to talk about it on here. Long story short, it was bought by the Discovery Corporation, Curiosity it was, and they made an announcement and things like that. So he is now an official employee of the Discovery whatever network, association, group, company thing.
Can he get us Mike Rowe on this show?
I was thinking about that. I think we need to get Mike Rowe on here.
I think so too.
Or we'll just make this a show talking about Mike Rowe.
Mike Rowe?
I want Mike really Rowe's voice. The dude has an awesome voice.
Right?
Yes. Well, let's talk a little bit about news and not Mike Rowe news. This is all about hotels and a certain themed hotel that might be coming your way.
Playboy. Wait, what?
This announcement just came out, and it's that Atari is licensing their name to hotels because Atari has signed a contract that's going to see the Atari name used to help brand hotels across America. You're going to see the first location in Phoenix, and other locations are going to be Austin, Chicago, Denver, Las Vegas, San Francisco, San Jose, and Seattle. The main draw of this hotel theme is going to be like an esports studio sort of thing. There's no specific details released yet on what this themed hotel is going to be, but apparently the hotel will have a quote, Atari, see, I can't even say it because they're so irrelevant, Atari gaming playground, end quote. And essentially some form of esports, like I mentioned, is going to be in there. And who knows what level of esports, but this is happening. There's going to be Atari-themed hotels across America. Chris Farrell, your look of disgust right now must mean you're very interested. So tell us when you're going to book this.
I mean, if this was the 80s, someone might care more. But like Albert says in the chat room, is Atari even still a thing? We've been making fun of them on this show lightly, but more of going, why are they doing this? Because remember, they're building their own like console game that's going to do throwbacks, but is somehow magically going to do modern day games that's been delayed another, 2 or 3 months. So we don't know what's going on. I don't know that I would care about an Atari hotel. I mean, it might be a cool novelty. And I guess if you're in esports, the potential there for, if you're a traveling esports team, maybe these cities are places where there's a lot of esport teams that come in and play. That might be a great place to have training and stuff or rooms pre-set up for you. But I don't get the draw. And this is coming from someone who, through the late 80s and the 90s, played a lot of video games and hell, the early 2000s, to be honest. But I don't care. I think I'd rather go to the Taco Bell hotel. That's a better story.
You know, I have to admit, I kind of struggle to see the need to have a gaming themed hotel at all. Like, you get it when you have something that's like a bigger sort of thing, but to have a gaming themed hotel, like, what's the point? Because gaming is something that you don't really generally go, unless you're a specific type of person or specific, esports person or whatever. You don't generally go and immerse yourself in something like Disneyland, right? You don't go spend weeks on time enjoying gaming at a destination. So I question this.
I guess it's a matter of what all are they presenting, because I'll admit, here a little bit of backstory. I go down YouTube rabbit holes all the time. One of the things that fascinates me is like Japan and China, the whole capsule hotel concept. And I was watching one guy's YouTube channel. I can't remember who it is. He went to a capsule hotel that was based around gaming. And by that, what was it? The lobby was full of gaming rigs, like Alienware machines that were fully spec'd out. They had 12 machines locally networked with internet play. That had a huge catalog of games on it that you could go and play online. It was included as part of your price for admission. And then they also had like 3 different VR rigs set up that once you had bought your hotel room, you could play all these things. So I could see from that perspective where it might be interesting to play a couple different games, try some stuff you wouldn't normally experience. But I don't know that it's appealing to a huge audience. Am I off base with that?
You know, one of the things that's interesting in the chat, if you didn't know this, we do stream the show live on Mondays at 8:45 p.m. Eastern time at Geeks.live. And in the chat, we have Dane that says, might be good in Vegas. And one of the things that I think is interesting with this is I did mention actually that Vegas is in that list. And a couple of the articles that I first saw before I ended up looking a little more into it were actually specifically citing this as coming to Vegas. That was the spin on the headline. So maybe I guess in certain areas, I don't know if I see a reason for this to be in Seattle, but I guess we'll see.
Might be because there's a lot of gamers that are headquartered in the Seattle because of all the tech sector up there. Mm-hmm. It could be because, Silicon Valley, same thing, or I don't know, maybe another place that there's a lot of VR stuff, like maybe Atlanta or something like that. I could see where you'd want to do this, where there'd be either a big population base or a big base of people that inherently were classic gamers or combined together. There's a market for just about anything out there. The question is there enough market to sustain the business?
I guess when I look at this, I feel like a Pokemon themed hotel would do a heck of a lot better than an Atari themed hotel. That's the sort of what I look at with this.
Depends on where you are and what the theming is of it. But yes, to an extent, I do agree with you. But Pokemon's a bigger brand than Atari at this point in time. That's the thing you got to consider. You could arguably say, what if I had a Nintendo themed hotel or an Atari themed hotel next door to each other? Which one would I be more inclined to stay in? It would be Nintendo, because to me, in my current age and the current state of gaming, Nintendo is more relevant. That's the thing with Atari right now, and why I'm kind of scratching my head a little bit is historically Atari has a lot of back history behind them about why they were so dominant, some classic games. But when you talk about Atari in today's world, what do people think of? I mean, you might be able to get some nostalgia pulled off here, but I don't think it would be as interesting as like a Nintendo one or a Sony one with a PlayStation and its theming towards all those things. And I don't even understand some of their cities. Like San Francisco makes sense. Seattle makes sense because big tech. San Jose to a lesser extent does.
I disagree. I don't think Seattle does make sense because big tech.
Oh, dude, there's so many Atari people there still.
I don't see it. I see it more as a modern culture.
And the video game collector market and stuff like that is huge in Seattle right now. So, I mean, and it has been for ages. There's a huge retro gaming community in the Seattle area. So that one makes the most sense to me. I bet you once one of these open, and I'm going to plug someone else's YouTube channel here because I really like it. There's a YouTube channel called Metal Jesus Rocks that's all about like his games that he collects and his gaming rooms and going on tours to Japan to find stuff. I guarantee you with him being in Seattle, as soon as an Atari place opens there, they're either going to invite him to come in to do a video or he's going to do it, because he and a great community in that area are super into historical gaming and retro gaming.
All right. Well, I can't argue your points, I guess. So I'll stand somewhat corrected, maybe. I don't know, before everybody sends hate mail. I don't know.
You have send the hate mail to js@gonnageek.com. Don't forget.
But here's the thing. They say it's going to be themed. They don't say exactly what it is. I picture like when you go to check in, you're going to have to like actually either you have to fight the space invaders. Like you have to be play space invaders to get to your hotel room. If you fail, you don't get your hotel room. They still get your money. Or on the opposite, they'll assign hotel rooms via like a live Pong situation where you're going to bounce into a room randomly. I think that's how it's going to work.
Yeah, I think what would be hilarious is there's some arcade bars in the town I live in. And one of the things they have is a tabletop Pong game, which is not like video game based. It's actually physical paddles and a physical ball that slides across the screen. they are totally going to make a room that is live action Pong, where it's 2 beds on either side of the room and a ball that bounces, and you sit on the bed and control and go bong, bong, and push things around the room. That would be cool, and I'm in if that's the case.
You know, we've all been in hotel room where we've heard our hotel neighbors being very, very loud at night. This is going to be a whole different type of loudness. SP, any final thoughts before we move on to the next news?
They probably went with the Atari because they could get the rights to it versus Sony or Microsoft or whoever out there. They probably just wanted too much money in order to do it. You have the gaming arcades, the classic gaming arcades, which are doing okay, but I just don't see them as a huge business. So will this succeed? I don't know. I would hope so, but I don't think they will.
All right. Well, speaking of succeeding in gaming, that's the question about this next news point, because there's some interesting rumors coming out about the Switch Pro, right, Chris?
There are. So this is a rumor that keeps bubbling up. And before we start, you can't say that the Switch hasn't been a success. It's sold, 41 million systems worldwide compared to Microsoft's 40 million for the Xbox One. So the Switch, it's a big deal. I remember you could not find them on shelves for months at a time. One thing we've seen today, especially between Sony and Microsoft, is there's this big race to get the most powerful console out there that'll have the prettiest 4K picture with how many gigaflops of graphical processing power and things like that. The Nintendo Switch, as is right now, puts out a 1080p picture. Some people would argue that that's lacking, and it's 1080p max. Not all games will do that. And when undocked, puts out only 720p. So there has been a lot of questioning if there's going to be a Pro version of the Switch come out, something similar to the PS4 Pro or the Xbox One X we saw come from Microsoft. So we're starting to get some answers on that, and we have seen some minor evolutions of the Switch as we get there. There's 2 new versions right now. There's the Switch Lite, which, if you guys weren't aware, was basically a Switch that was stuck in handheld mode. They've got the Joy-Cons affixed to the screen. It's slightly smaller, and it is like 180 or 190 retail. And then they did put a second revision of the Switch out, which is literally the exact same console with a different processor that is more battery efficient. I have upgraded to one of those, and it makes a huge difference. I could play Zelda for about 6 hours without plugging in. So there is something set up that shows they are going to make improvements, but neither of these improvements have come out yet are a Switch 2 or a fabled Switch Pro. However, there is a lone report coming from the Korean media that says a Switch Pro might not even be deserving of the name Pro. What does that mean? Well, the report claims that Nintendo and Nvidia are working together on a new custom chip to improve the performance on the next Switch console. But here's the odd thing. That chip might not support 4K output as hoped by many customers out there. It's a strange twist considering that the Tegra X1 inside the current Switch is technically capable of 4K output because it's the same thing that we see in Nvidia's Android TV Shield devices. Now, that being said, the Switch does do a lot more processing to run those games at 720p or 1080p in TV mode. So the custom chip is supposedly going to provide even more power for rendering those graphics quickly and cleanly, but not enough to support 4K. And here's the other kicker. Supposedly, development has slowed down. They're having issues, and it's not even projected to ship on time right now. So my question is, if they can't hit the holiday season, they probably don't want to put it out. But better yet, if all it's going to do is potentially buy me slightly more battery life and quicker load speeds and maybe slightly better graphics, is it really worth it if you put out a Pro Switch console that is more expensive than the current gen ones? I'm kind of struggling to figure out what Nintendo's doing here. And I've done that before. Remember, I didn't think the Switch was going to amount to anything at first until I actually saw it in action and changed my mind. But I don't understand what Nintendo's doing here with the rumored Switch Pro.
Yeah, it seems very interesting given the rumors on this. The only thing that I can assume is that the price tag rumor's wrong. It's going to be cheaper than the light version or whatever they call it now. And the whole name was lost in translation, and they forgot an O. So it's not the Pro, it's the Poor. So the Nintendo Switch Poor. That's what I'm going to assume here. SP, you're shaking your head.
I just think there's a lot more people that own one now, especially after the last holiday season than I thought. And a lot of people just love to take it to different places. Like if you're doing a watch party for a TV show, you go there and then a lot of people are playing their phones, but a lot of people are playing their Switch when they're doing it, especially if you're there because your friend is there, or your significant other is there because they're really into the show or the event or whatever. And so you can go ahead and play away. I didn't know in this day and age of mobile devices with tablets and smartphones that this sort of thing was going to take off the way it did. It did. And I think just like the incremental advances on the main consoles, like the Xbox S, PlayStation 4 Plus, I think it was. I don't know what the PlayStation went to. I think you're just going to find this, and it's a way to keep relevant for a little while longer before they release the next generation of stuff.
By the way, at Geeks.live, I am running a poll, and the question is, how many Nintendo Switch models should be on the market? And I gave the options of 1, 2, 3, or 4 plus. And as it currently stands, we got 67% saying 4 plus and 33% saying 2. So the internet wants confusion and have as many Switch models as you can.
It fascinates me, though, because one thing I forgot to bring up is the Switch has been on the market since, 2017?
Yeah.
It's not like the Xbox or the PlayStation. It's, 2012? So it sort of makes sense they would have these iterative updates. They don't really need to push out an iterative update at this point in time. So my guess, if I had to guess, is they're starting to do some research on what to do. And this report kind of went down the wrong path of a prototype they're looking at that's probably not coming anytime soon.
I think 2 Switch models is a good number, like they have now. Something that's a little less feature heavy, something that is the full-fledged version, and I think that just makes a lot of sense. Before we go on to the next news point here, I also had asked a poll about whether or not people would be more likely to stay at a geek-themed hotel, and it was a split 50-50 between the yes and the no, and it was bouncing back and forth quite a bit. So the world is divided. I think that would all come down to, of course, the price and the experience you want. Because, like, if you are just going somewhere and most of the event or the fun or whatever is in a park or whatever, then maybe you're okay to disconnect from It's a Small World when you go back to the hotel or something, right?
I think the other question would be, who are you traveling with?
Exactly.
If you're traveling by yourself, you might not care as much. If you're traveling with your kids who like to play games, you might be like, oh, this would be awesome for my kids too.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next news point here. We had an update about the abort test, was it? Or the abort process? The abort procedure? Something happened, SP. What happened?
Yeah, we aborted the podcast last week, and I'm reporting.
It's quite the news point you've got there. Can I do the after show where we talk about your news point about how we canceled last week's podcast?
That'd be great. Actually, it worked out in my favor because this is the story that I wanted to cover last week, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to because the test was aborted. What we were talking about is the SpaceX's Crew Dragon abort test. We talked about it on the previous podcast that we did, and
hold that thought.
Thought. I'm watching.
Yeah, let's
what's going on, man?
I don't know. You've been on and off all night. Let's do this. Let's hang you up and
call back.
Call you back.
Okay.
It's finally not me.
Oh, there you go. You're back. And you know what it probably is, SP? It's probably because I know this. Don't deny it. You have gone for watching The Bachelor later. You have set up many, many televisions in your living room, and you have a bunch of streaming going on right now, streaming a bunch of different versions of The Bachelor. I just know that that's the case, and so it's hogging all your bandwidth.
No, it's not the case. However, it might be my portal router that Chris was having issues with, and it's one of the reasons why I was saying I want to go to another router like Eros or whatever. Okay. So where do you want me to pick up?
If you want to carry on the same sentence, go ahead. If you want to back up a sentence, I'll
go back way up.
Okay.
So what I wanted to talk about last week, unfortunately, we wasn't going to be able to talk about because it didn't happen. It was aborted, just like this podcast. What did end up happening, though, in the past week, I believe the next day, really, is that SpaceX Crew Dragon abort tests went off, and it was picture perfect, according to Elon Musk. So I got this from an article from space.com. It was written by Amy Thompson, but has been reported many, many places. This is something we talked about the last podcast that we were on, and we are looking forward to actually getting a U.S. crewed capsule up to the ISS, hopefully later on this year. Here's what happened by the numbers. SpaceX's high-altitude test of its Crew Dragon launch escape system on Sunday morning, January 19, 2020, appears to have been a picture-perfect mission, according to company founder and CEO Elon Musk. The flight test had tested the emergency escape system on the company's new astronaut taxi. That's what we're calling it now, I guess, astronaut taxi, the Crew Dragon capsule, with SpaceX sacrificing one of its Falcon 9 rockets in the process. Yes, they sacrificed a Falcon 9 rocket. We'll get in more into that in a second.
And so did they bring in Constantine for this sacrifice? Was it that sort of sacrifice, or what was it?
Poured a little salt in a circle.
Yeah.
And then, that's what kind of sacrifice it was. So on Sunday, the Falcon 9, with a thrice flown first stage, sat perched on its launch pad at Kennedy Space Center's historic Pad 39A. That is the same launch pad that went to the moon and launched the space shuttle. 84 seconds after liftoff, the capsule's abort system was triggered. Talk about triggered. And the craft pushed itself away from its launch. It's not really pushed, rocketed away is really what happened. The Falcon 9 rocket exploded in a brilliant fireball soon after. I wish I would have seen it. Breaking apart due to increasing aerodynamic forces. The peak velocity of the Dragon during the abort was more than double the speed of sound. It went to Mach 2.2. Not bad, actually. And it achieved an altitude of 40 kilometers or 131,000 feet, Musk explained during the briefing. And Chris, I have to ask you, when's the last time you flew at a cruising altitude of 131,000 feet?
Well, when I went to go visit Suncast at Mars last week, when the show got canceled, I got to fly pretty high before we went to warp speed.
So, Stephen, when's the last time you took a commercial airliner at 131,000 feet?
Last Monday at about 8:45 in the evening. That's when it was.
Do either of you two have a clue at what the normal cruising altitude of a commercial airliner is?
Obviously 375,000 feet.
Yeah. It is. It's somewhere between 20 and 35,000 feet, guys. So this is way, way up there. Quote, the booster actually exploded as expected, so that it was so very exciting, he said. And it, meaning the Crew Dragon, landed in relatively high winds at ocean level, which I think helped us envelope the mission for when it is crewed, unquote. So Elon Musk is saying that the adverse conditions during the tests actually helped them see how far they could push the recovery system, which is a good test to actually happen if you are marginal on your launch tolerances.
You see, the problem is you said you assumed when you asked me about a commercial flight and when I had been, you assumed that I didn't go on Elon Musk's commercial flight that he saves for only certain people. And since you know that he does or has visited, within a couple kilometers away from me, you just didn't realize that we are BFFs and I get to go on that flight. So there you go.
So Musk also noted that the Crew Dragon could conduct an escape at any point during the mission, right up until the craft reaches orbit, a feature the space shuttle did not have. That's an important note, is that the rescue abort system is actually more functional than it was on the space shuttle. So after review of the data, SpaceX hopes that NASA will clear Crew Dragon to carry humans. Once that happens, Demo 2, which is the mission to the International Space Station, can get off the ground. Musk said that could happen in the next couple of months. Musk said that the hardware needed to fly that first crewed mission will be ready by the end of February. Right now, NASA and SpaceX are trying to nail down the details of that first mission. It won't happen until the data is hard crunched. But this is where SpaceX is now ahead of Boeing. Boeing with their Starliner had already done their recovery system test and pass, but then they failed some other tests. So they are in the point of being able to go to the ISS first at this juncture.
All right. So that's a good segue to the poll that I asked, which was, are you feeling more confident or less confident in SpaceX than you were 2 years ago. And it was split across the board. Well, as it switched suddenly, we had 50%. Someone just voted. We had 50%.
I love our audience.
50% said more confident, 25% said less confident, and 25% said about the same. And I have to say, personally, I've obviously made jokes, low-hanging fruit jokes here and there about SpaceX and the challenges that they've had and, all of these other things. But I have to say, out of everything that we've read about to do with modern space development, I feel the most confident in SpaceX because of situations like this going pretty much as anticipated, and sort of the steps that they're willing to do throughout all of the different phases. However, I do also have a little bit of me that's reserved for the conspiracy theory, saying, why is it that they always keep themselves quiet when things go wrong? And they're very, very tight-lipped when things do go wrong.
So
They
I
can
would
be.
say, go ahead. Do you get SP?
No. Go back.
So I would tend to agree with you, Stephen, that I am more confident as well. And touching on your point of how they go quiet when things go wrong, I think a lot of why people read more success into it is because, just like with Tesla, their marketing plan on how they go about publicizing the launches, how they go about live streaming and tweeting everything about it, trying to put as much content out there as possible anytime there's a launch, I think does a lot to drive interest and get people seeing what progress is being made. And I think because they put so much out when that happens, some people kind of don't notice as much when they go quiet for a little bit, because like, oh, they're not telling us anything right now. They'll be telling us more later. So I'm not saying they're not successful, but I wonder how much that public interpretation of their success comes from the fact that they put it out there as much as possible versus what you would get from like Blue Origin or the Boeing side of the house, where I don't see constant tweets about here's what's going on with these guys, constant YouTube videos of people diagnosing what's going on or doing their own commentary on the launches. So I think a lot of it is their marketing is fantastic and does a good job of shaping public opinion as well.
I'd agree with that 100%.
I think Elon wants to show a very positive picture about what's going on, but he realizes that as long as he sets expectations like he did with the Starliner, the spaceship announcement that he did, he said, well, if everything goes okay, we can have one of these ready to go in like 8 months or whatever he said. And I think he is leaving enough leeway to say there might be something that happens that goes wrong. And he's the first to say that space travel is dangerous. We're trying to make it as routine as possible, but it is dangerous and you have to solve for those safety tolerances. One of the great things about SpaceX that I don't think Boeing was prepared to do is they actually sacrificed a booster to make this test happen. That's right. A lot of money. That's a lot of capital. Now, it was a booster that was flown 3 times before. So this was like, okay, can this thing get up a 4th time? And it did. So that was cool. And then they were, lost it because, well, they're only designed to go so far, especially the early ones, the early models, the early marks, the early versions. They were only designed for so many launches versus the later ones. They're designed to have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 launches.
Which makes it smart they test it that way. What are they going to do with it otherwise? Put it on display somewhere?
As I sit here over the last couple minutes thinking about what you just said with the PR and the marketing and the hype and things like that, Chris, I think it's really interesting to think about the concept that maybe someone has made that decision with the other companies that they're not looking in for that public buyout. Now, what does that say about the company? I don't know. That they're a public buy-in where they're not looking to have all of this hype and all of this cool factor that SpaceX is. And to me, I'm kind of like, well, don't you think you'd want to have the world supporting your product a little bit and really getting behind it? But obviously the other companies have felt that the hype train is not the train they want to be on.
It's a double-edged sword, though. You get all this excitement and you're constantly publicizing these things. And when something goes catastrophically wrong, that's a lot of eyes on it still, too. I mean, I'm not knocking their plan for how they use the media and their own social media grace to hype up everything that's going on, because it's legitimately exciting. But it's also dangerous from their perspective that if something goes catastrophically wrong, it's being covered by hundreds of people. It's being streamed all across the world. And then everyone starts going, oh my God, what just happened with product XYZ? Oh no, it's all screwed. And they've got a media nightmare on their hands. So I think it's an interesting concept what they're doing, because growing up, I was fascinated with space, wanted to be an astronaut. We all went through that phase, I'm sure, but it's really cool to see how much they put out there in today's world.
So Boeing's been around space travel for a while. They were involved in actually maintaining the space shuttle fleet and launching the space shuttle fleet as a contract vehicle behind it. They also they've been involved in some high visibility failures with the space systems. They also had MH370, which was a 777, a Boeing 777, and also, the 737 MAX issue that they've been having. So it's 3 high profile failures. I think Boeing as a company has modified itself over the years for self-preservation. And
Fair.
they just need to do that at this point. And whereas Elon Musk, he's like, I don't care about self-preservation. I just want to go and have success. And I want to push the limits of everything. And I'm going to have some failures along the way, but it is going to be what it is going to be.
Fair enough. Well, moving on to our extra here. We just had a couple of other points that we wanted to quickly touch on here. First off, let's talk briefly about how there are Canadian scientists that are trying to dissolve tires. I wanted to mention this because I just came across this and I thought that was a really interesting thing, that there's researchers in McMaster University that are looking to solve the tire problem. If you didn't know this, tires are a big problem ecologically because of the fact that they're meant to be a one-time use product, and there's no real good way to get rid of them other than just some of the chopping up methods where a certain small percentage of them become mulch or become playground, whatever, you know. The majority of them are dumped, and the reason why this is a problem is because there are such chemical compounds in there that are meant so that your tire doesn't fall apart as you drive across all of these horrible things that are on the road. And so it's really hard to take care of these. And apparently they have found a technique to help dissolve car tires so that they can then recycle the rubber. Now, this is really in its infancy. It's definitely not ready for mainstream use, but it was just something that I thought was kind of a neat little scientific development. And we haven't heard a lot about sort of development with like tire problems, and tires have been a problem forever. Think back, Chris. I know you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Early episodes of The Simpsons, tire fire, right? Like, you know,
The Springfield tire fire.
Exactly. This has been a known problem for decades, and we've gotten nowhere. And so I just thought it was interesting.
Fascinating.
Yeah, there was a tire fire that started up in our area, our neck of the woods here this past year, and it's going to burn for a while. And I believe Houston had a huge tire fire set off earlier this year. Either that or it was a refinement fire. I can't remember which, but I thought it was a tire fire. Those things last literally for decades, and it's very toxic. And if there's a way to recycle tires, let's recycle the tires. And I'm not talking about just making the playground little rubber things that might or might not be toxic for kids. I'm talking about actually reusing it just like you would reuse plastics and stuff, because I don't know if it's as much as an endangered commodity as oil is, but if there's something that we could do with it versus just letting it sit there for a while like nuclear waste, then let's do something with it.
Let's go on to the next extra point here, which, Chris, you had something interesting that you wanted to bring about, because I know you're all about the awards and you live this season. When it is award season, it's all that SP and I hear in our group chat with Chris. Seriously, he's sending us links hourly about who's going to be possibly winning the next whatever award. And then when the awards happen, it's video clips endlessly for days. So Chris, go ahead.
I'm all about the podcast awards. Congratulations, Cody, and congratulations to us for winning Best Show on Gonna Geek through the Gonna Geek stuff. No, but in all seriousness, though, it should surprise no one. John Williams won yet another Grammy, his 25th for Star Wars. But here's the twist. It wasn't for what he did in Star Wars Rise of Skywalker or anything like that. It's for what he composed for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which is a theme park. Yes, he did win a theme for what is called the Galaxy's Edge Symphonic Suite. inspired by the Star Wars Galaxy Edge's theme park. It's different music than you would hear in the movies because it's more like the music you would hear if you lived in the world of Star Wars, not if you were watching the movies or TV shows. So unless you've been to Galaxy's Edge, you probably haven't heard much of the music because they've only sprinkled a little bit in their advertising for Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run or Star Wars Rise of the Resistance. So I just thought it was fascinating that he won a Grammy Award for his Star Wars composition for a theme park, not for the movies or any of the TV shows. It's cool to me.
I agree. I think that I actually hadn't heard about this until you posted this in our document, and it's cool. It also goes to show that Chris Farrell is responsible for all sorts of awards because of the fact that he has been a very, very big advocate for Galaxy's Edge. And so this is all you're doing, Chris. Pat yourself on the back.
Well, I mean, I wish I could take credit, but there are people out there that are far more doing, I don't know how to phrase this correctly, that have done far more for Star Wars Galaxy Edge than me talking about it occasionally on the GonnaGeek.com show.
And lastly, in our extra here, let's just quickly talk about how Microsoft Windows 7 just can't go away. If you didn't know this, Microsoft creates problems for themselves all the time, and that's what they did. They created a problem with themselves as they ended Windows 7. So long story short is, as we mentioned, Windows 7 was end of life, meaning that unless you were paying for support like a corporation, you no longer got Windows 7 updates. This was as of, I think it was last month, wasn't it, Chris? Or this month? Was it this month?
This month, I believe, was the last update.
Right. So it came out and they did the last set of patches. Well, obviously, they're going to do a little bit of patches before they do that. And then it was end of life, deemed end of life, meaning no more free updates for you. Well, apparently, quote, after installing KB4534310, your desktop wallpaper might display as black when set to stretch. That's from Microsoft themselves. So apparently they broke the wallpaper of all things, the most basic part of Windows. They broke the wallpaper in their final update. And yes, they did, of course, turn around and provide the patch to people for free, even though it was end of life. They did go and they did put out that patch. I just had to mention it because of the fact that they screwed up the last set of patches.
Didn't they say that they might on their own go ahead and release patches in the future, but we're not going to depend on it anymore? I think that's what the end of life really was, because they knew that there was a lot of people out there that will be continuing to use Windows 7 machines either for developmental purposes or whatever. And so they just didn't want them to be completely out, but they do want to give people Windows. And if you have Windows 7, you can get Windows 10 for free.
Well, allegedly, Microsoft originally said that this Windows 7 fix, this was when they were developing it, that when they were developing the Windows 7 fix, that it would only be available, quote, for organizations who have purchased Windows 7 extended security updates, end quote. So that, to me, tells me where their mindset is with it. Now, obviously, they've changed their mind because of the stupidity of that.
When your final patch breaks something before you go to a charged model for premium support, I don't think you have much of a choice other than to be like, okay, we're going to get this fix out there. And like SP mentioned, they kind of left the door open for it, similar to what we saw with Windows XP, where when there were some terrible exploits that came out, Microsoft went, man, there's a lot of machines still running Windows XP, and we don't want the bad press for somebody creating a botnet out of all these machines. Let's just put a patch out. And it seemed to be the smart move.
So what you're saying is if you like it, then you should have put a patch on it? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, if it's end of life, you should have put the last patch on it, is what I'm saying.
Fair enough.
Stephen, I want to see a video of you doing a spoof of that song with those lyrics.
Yes.
I can't do it. Let's go ahead and move on to our segment this week. Here we go. Sorry, too many buttons to push. Still getting used to the workflow. Oh, we lost SP too, so that worked out.
Yeah,
That
he's
worked out.
been having issues.
Let's just see what
It
happens.
seemed like.
Let's see. How he's back. Hi, SSP.
Is this any better?
No,
Damn it.
it's okay. You sound okay. You sound okay.
Okay.
You're not sounding like your visual. Your visual
I know.
is rough,
I'm
but
all
you're
max headroom.
We'll
Yeah.
put a deep fake in post. Deep fake SP.
You can put Chris's head on me. That'd be fine.
But no, you're fine. You're fine. It's okay. All right, let's do this. And pull up my notes.
I was putting my head behind yours. It didn't work very well. It sounded better in my head, damn it, than it
What
worked
the
in
hell
for
is he
real.
doing?
It worked better in my head than it did on camera, damn it. I know Suncast's going to gift this now.
All right. So in the past, I have talked a little bit about some of my smart home endeavors. This is a tree that I've decided to bark up because of none other than Chris Farrell. I will every day of the week give him the credit because he started with smart home stuff and he's like, look what I can do. And I'm like, I want to do that. Just like most things in my life with Chris Farrell. And so I started to do some smart home stuff. Well, if you didn't catch this, originally I started to do a lot around the Wink platform. The Wink platform is it's junk now. It's garbage. I was going to say poo-poo, pull a JS reference there. And it's really not good anymore. So I had to move off of that. Well, I decided to switch to Smart Things. And then after being provided a Habitat elevation hub for review, I did that review on here. I decided that I actually wanted to go that way a little bit more. And it's been encouraging me to do all sorts of tinkering because the Habitat has a little bit more flexibility than Smart Things. And so my whole smart home has kind of evolved quite a bit over the last little while. And I thought since it's been a while since I've talked about this, it was time to do a little bit of an update of some of the changes that I've made in my smart home. And as I go through this, I'll encourage Chris and SB to ask questions, tell me that I'm insane, and just tell me to stop talking. Any of those if they'd like.
How about all of those?
That works. That absolutely works.
Steven, you're insane. Stop talking. Why do you keep talking to us? I think I hit all the marks right there.
Perfect. Go ahead and try to figure out how to get behind SP's frame. People who aren't watching live don't get that. Let's start off with some of the major changes that I've done with my smart home system. The first thing that I did was some smart thermostats. I've explained in the past that I had a desire to put smart thermostats in, but I do have baseboard heating. That means there's one thermostat per room, some rooms having multiple. And this can become very, very expensive if you want to put a smart thermostat on every room. Well, last year I did a bit of a review on the Mesa smart thermostats. I had 2 of them, and honestly, they were pretty good. But in December, I actually moved on from using Mesa because I'm cheap. SP, you can attest to how cheap I am, right?
Oh, you're one of the cheapest podcasters I know.
Are you just channeling Jar Jar Binks, Mesa smart home user?
Exactly. So I moved on from the Mesa to one that is made by a company called Snopay. I think they're French Canadian. And the reason why I did that was because that company has smart thermostats and they're in the process of changing their infrastructure. They currently had a proprietary sort of wireless backhaul with specific gateway devices you needed, but they're switching so that they're using a standard platform, the Zigbee technology. And as such, they were doing some clearance of their products, which they have come out and said, while we're migrating, we will continue to support these. There's no problem. There's no technical limitations. It's just we want to get to this standard platform. And when they were doing this clear out, there was also in my province a significant rebate, which made it so that they almost equated to just barely above a regular dumb thermostat. And for me, I've been in my house for a while. Some of my thermostats are garbage. I'm spending tons of money because of the fact that they're contractor grade. They're, 10 plus years old and they're really inaccurate now. So I was going to have to go around and replace several of these anyways. And the price that I got where it worked out, they ended up, like I said, being not much more than a regular dumb thermostat. So I took advantage of that. And because they were so discounted, and even though they don't compare, and I'll probably do a full review later, even though they don't fully compare to the Mesa smart thermostats, I did indeed decide to go through and replace a whole bunch in my house. So I ordered a whole bunch of them and installed them all throughout my house in December and maybe, just this past week.
How
finished
many
it.
were they in all, Stephen?
How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, 9.
So a spare then?
I have a spare. Yes, I have a
Okay.
spare. Yeah,
Makes
Unlike
sense.
the
absolutely.
toe
Good idea.
that he cut off before.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Unlike the toe that you cut off before that you're having problems counting without.
Yeah, exactly. So I do have a spare one, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I did want to actually mention that on here, was the fact that because it is technology that will be going away, I did make sure to buy a spare one. And also a couple of my rooms don't get used very often, so it wouldn't be the end of the world if I had to go and pull one out of those. And what I really like about that is the fact that I can see the temperatures, of course, in all of my rooms now. I can see them independently and see whether they're running, and the ones that aren't running, seeing if it's getting cold and if I want to go ahead and consider putting on the heat in certain rooms. Like, for example, I've got a bathroom that's kind of in the middle of my house. I rarely ever have to run the heat, but I always thought, like, am I doing myself a disservice? Is that dropping down in the middle of the night or whatever? But I can go in and I can see, because it's in the middle of my room, it's getting all of this heat elsewhere. It would never be running. And it was a nice side benefit by putting that in there. I can go back and I can check. So, it's kind of a nice side benefit to having that in. And we had a big cold snap over the last little bit. And I have to say, I think that I probably saved a good chunk of hydro money because of the fact that I had these in a couple key rooms and could adjust it smartly and program in some smart, timings and things like that.
So it's schedulable then, similar to like
Yeah.
the Nest remote and things like that. So you could say, hey, during the day we're all at work, so there's no reason to heat all these rooms up to X temperature. Let's heat it to X minus Y or something like that.
And that's one of the big savings that I think I've had is doing our bathroom, because our bathroom has a window outside and you don't want a cold tushy at night. So you got to have the heat up a little bit. But also because of that, we generally were running that heat all the time.
I mean, a cold tushy means you'll get out of the bathroom faster and back to your warm bed. So there's something to be said for that.
Fair enough. If I could go, like, honestly, if I wasn't being cheap, I'd go with the Misa any day, because I do think that the interface is a little bit better, but who knows, maybe this will get better. But let's go to that core piece of the other smart stuff that I'm going to talk about today, because that's sort of adjacent. It doesn't really work in with the rest of my smart stuff. It's kind of independent, but it was worth a mention. It's Hubitat. The fact that I switched to Hubitat after doing that review, I decided I wanted to tinker a little bit more. It was like all the stress of the review was off of me, and I thought, okay, let's go back to this and see, because it is complex. I mentioned that in the review, and I've just loved the continuing to tinker with the programming and the real flexibility of the Hubitat, and that's more up my alley. So I have using my smart things in a capacity I'll tell you about in a bit, but it's really weird. But most of my stuff I've migrated over to the Hubitat itself, and the Hubitat is the central brain that controls my smart lights or my smart switches and all that other stuff. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about right now is my kitchen lights. In the past on the show, I did a whole review about my big Wink setup, and one of the things I had in there was controlling my 2 banks of lights in my kitchen. I had a Wink relay, essentially a touch screen panel that also controls 2 independent circuits on your lights. And unfortunately, with Wink going so bad, I had to move on from that. And it was a bit of a challenge because of the fact that the Wink relay, if you've not put in a smart switch, you don't know that a lot of times if your house is done annoyingly, you have space issues as you try to put in these smart switches. And that was the nice thing about the Wink relay, was it only took up one of a 2-gang switch, even though it was covering both. When I went to go put in 2 independent switches, that was quite the problem. But I had to do that because I had to get rid of the Wink relay, and so I put in 2 independent smart switches. Now, I'm going to say, I went through a couple different smart switches. I had problems with a couple different ones, one of which was the Leviton smart switch. They would randomly lock up on me. It was quite a pain to find ones that worked well. And I just wanted to give a shout out there because I tried putting the money into the Leviton brand, and I Googled, and it was a known problem, and there was no real good firmware fix, and some people had it, some people didn't. So I had to move on. And the ones I landed on were some ones called Inovelli Demmers. They're the version 2 of the Red series. And I wanted to have dimming lights in the kitchen so that I could dim them when I get up before the rest of the family, things like that. And one of the really cool things about the Innovelli switches is they actually have a little LED on the side that is multicolor. So you can go and you can set it to whatever color you want. And it also, of course, shows the level of dim when you are, turning on the lights and they're fading on or fading off. But you can program that LED to do whatever you want. And so when you go and like, let's say I wanted it to turn red when my garage door was left open, I could do that. Or I wanted it to flash when there was another problem going on in the house, like all of a sudden the kid's door opened or whatever, I could go and I can program that because the hubs see that as just an independent multicolored light. So however you can think to program, you can think to program. And Hubitat's really flexible with this because the programming and the sort of robots or the if capability is really strong in Hubitat and very flexible. And one of the ways that I've gone and I've done that is where I have motion on my kitchen. And so when the lights shut off automatically, because they're set to shut off after like 5 minutes of inactivity, when they go to shut off a minute before, they actually start flashing yellow. So if you're nearby and for some reason it's not picked up your motion, like you've been super still as you've been sitting there or whatever, or on your phone, you might catch that out the corner of your eye. And so I have actually had that happen a couple times where I've just seen that and I've just kind of, moved my hand a little bit and then it re-triggers it and then it knows there's motion. But speaking of the motion, in order to do this, how I did this was I got a Samsung SmartThings motion sensor. It was really inexpensive, like a pretty reasonable price for what they are. And I put that on the side of my fridge because you walk into my kitchen and you walk past the fridge. And because it's got a magnetic back, I just stuck it on the side of my fridge. So when you walk in and you walk past, the lights come on automatically because I have smart switches on the kitchen. And the challenge that I ran in with this was I have animals. I have a dog, I have some cats, and you don't really want them setting off the lights. Keeping in mind, a motion sensor is supposed to pick up a whole bunch of different space, up, down, side to side. It's supposed to pick up a whole bunch of stuff. So the way that I solved that was honestly just poor man's way of doing it, and I could make it a little bit better. But I used masking tape, where all I did was I put a piece of masking tape over the one side that I didn't want it to pick up and the bottom side, so that essentially the field of view that it was picking up was being masked, so that you didn't have to worry about the lower level, the dog, setting it off.
So the motion sensor is 360 degree on that sensor then?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because like when I installed the stuff for my house alarm, they said if you're worried about your pet setting it up, install it upside down because it doesn't have like an angled view about like that. Instead, it kind of angles it like that. That's not a great description for those that are listening on audio. I did my hand angled downward, then angled upward for my second comparison.
I didn't see that. I tried flipping it around. My kids have flipped it upside down, and it's still gone off. So I think it's the full view, but I could be wrong. I guess I should look into that more. But that was the way I solved it, and it seems to work well.
Oh, makes sense.
The other thing that I also have done is along the line of motion is in my garage. I've got some smart bulbs in there, and rather than having to do smart switches, because they can be kind of expensive and it's three-way setup and all this stuff, I went and I got some super cheap bulbs that were available for just plugging into my garage lights inside my garage. So when I go to take the dog out, I have a motion sensor in there. And what ends up happening is the lights come on, and then again, after so many minutes of inactivity, they go off. And it works really, really well because the switch placement in that garage is sort of behind a shelf, just the way we've got some shelving. It's not ideal. And also, benefit is usually I send my dog ahead of me, so she triggers it. So by the time I even step in, it's completely on. It's great. It's fantastic. And I also got a little bit Christmassy because the bulbs that I got dirt cheap were actually color changing. I came into a real big clearance, and what I did was usually rest of the year, the way I have it, you walk in, lights come on, a few minutes in activity, lights go off. Well, I changed that over Christmas because, of course, I'm obsessed with Christmas lights. Chris has said that many times, where I ended up having it so that when the lights went off, they actually came back on as Christmas colors. So half the garage was red, half of it was green. And then, just some other things where they automatically went off at 11 o'clock at night. I actually tried to get a video of it and go in, but I was too lazy to get my tripod because I couldn't stand still enough and it kept picking up my motion. But yeah, it was kind of a neat little thing to have over Christmas and just add a little bit more to that sort of smart thing, which is just a little more fun. Now, here's where I used my SmartThings hub. In the past, I mentioned that I have some yards in the backyard, and I have a suite that my in-laws do rent. And one of the things that I like to do is make sure that they have access to turning on the pathway lights, the backyard lights, things like that, if they have to take their animal out or whatever. And one thing that Wink did really well that Habitat and SmartThings don't do well or don't do is user sharing of devices. The way that Wink worked, you could go in and you could share specific devices with certain people. So I had Chris go and he shared with me all of his individual life for his bedroom, so I could go and just in the middle of the night turn them into red.
Sure.
But I had no access to the stuff outside of his bedroom because he didn't share that with me. So so that's what I was able to do with Wink, was I was able to go to those pathway lights and share that specifically with my in-laws. Well, with Samsung SmartThings, it's an all or nothing setup. You give all access or you give none. And it's the same thing with Habitat. All the workarounds tend to be that way as well. In fact, I would say that SmartThings actually edges out Habitat for shareability on that. But the way that I did that was I found that someone created for Habitat a way to link your Habitat with your SmartThings hub. So I can go and I can share specific devices from the SmartThings hub to show up on Habitat, or reverse from Habitat onto the SmartThings hub. And so I was able to do that, where I have now given all access to my in-laws for my SmartThings hub. But on the Habitat side of things, I said, okay, share these specific devices with SmartThings. So on SmartThings, they only see these devices and they look like regular, SmartThings lights and things like that. But it's actually just talking back to Habitat. So a little bit of a janky way to do it, but it works. And I also get to continue to have my SmartThings hub set up and using it in a routine fashion. So if I want to go test something, I can go and test something on SmartThings, because occasionally there might be something that I want to test. Like when I was having those light issues that I had, I mentioned to you, I actually went and I paired those to SmartThings to make sure it wasn't the Habitat doing it. Now, one of the last things that I want to go and mention before I talk about a couple future considerations is I have gotten into using Wi-Fi devices. Now, I have been a big advocate of using Z-Wave and Zigbee. And what that is that's a wireless technology where you have a central hub and it controls those over that standard. So in our case here, what we had when all of a sudden Wink went bad, I went and most of my devices, I just switched it out to SmartThings. And then because I was using Zigbee and Z-Wave stuff, I was able to keep using that. I just had to switch out the brain. If I was, say, let's say I was using Philips Hue and Philips Hue went away, then I'm kind of SOL because their products talk to Philips Hue. Last year, there was Lowe's products that went away and a whole sort of situation like that. So that's why I've been kind of against Wi-Fi, plus I have seen lags and things like that, because with Wi-Fi devices, generally you are talking to a server, and if that server goes away, you're kind of sort of screwed. Plus, again, lag. One sec, I gotta take a drink. Well, here's the thing. I discovered something new. Actually, my brother told me about it with what he's doing, which is a little bit different than what I'm doing. But I can flash many Wi-Fi devices that are out there. There's a process where you can go and you can change the firmware that Wi-Fi device is using. It's not all of them, but it's a lot of them. And you can have it so it's running this local firmware talking on your local network. It gets rid of that server. It gets rid of that lag problem. It's all local. It's something that involves a Raspberry Pi. So I got to go and put the bulb or the plug into pairing mode or whatever and go through a couple steps on the Raspberry Pi. And it creates this weird sort of hotspot. It's a weird process. I'll save you the details. But essentially what it does is it goes and it clears out that software that's running on that Wi-Fi device, and it puts on this local running stuff. And I've been pretty impressed with it, actually, because someone has made it so that it is workable with Hubitat. My brother uses that Home Assistant platform. And when I found that Hubitat did this, I thought this was a pretty interesting thing, because some of that Wi-Fi stuff is a lot cheaper than the Zigbee and the Z-Wave. And what this has allowed me to do is do some areas in my house that were a good enhancement to have, but I didn't really want to spend a ton of money on. For example, in my bathroom, my fan, I needed to replace the switch on there. It was actually it was one of those timer switches, but the timer function hasn't worked in forever. And then over Christmas, it actually just gave up altogether. So I had to put in a dumb regular switch. Well, I don't want that running all the time because of the fact that I do get up early before the family as well. You know, you go for a shower, you leave, and you got to leave your fan on, or else you got too much humidity and there's all sorts of problems. So I had to replace that anyway. And to put a proper Zigbee or Z-Wave switch in there was a little bit more than I really wanted to spend. So I was able to go and find a really cheap, like I think it was like $19 or $20 or something, Wi-Fi switch that I could flash. And now it's working on my local network with my Hubitat. And it's might as well be a Zigbee or Z-Wave switch with the way that it works with Hubitat. Now, you do have to do a little bit of back end work as far as putting in a special what's called driver on Hubitat, but it worked out for me. And again, I didn't have to put too much money in there. I'm a little conscious about what you put in a bathroom because of, you know, the problem we talked about before with water. Willing to spend a little bit of money, as I mentioned before, but not wanting to spend too much money in there. But it does, it works well, and I've had really good success where I've gone and I have made it so that it goes off after a certain amount of time on. As well, I'm in the process of working to put a actual motion sensor / humidity detector combo so that there'll be all sorts of programming based on the humidity in there. As well, I also have actually several outdoor Wi-Fi switches that I purchased for my Christmas light setup this year.
Of course you did.
I know, right? And they're outdoor modules, and they were Wi-Fi, and this was before I knew I could flash them. Well, I have since determined that I can flash them and make them work locally. So I'm going to go and do all of that so they're running on my local network, and I can get these crappy Christmas outdoor Wi-Fi outlets out of the cloud and get them local. So those are kind of the big changes that I've made in my setup this year. I've got a few other things planned in the future. A lot of it's going to be revolving around my security system. Right now I have an independent security system that's, you know, it's online, but it's not connected to like one of those security monitoring companies or whatever. Well, its reliability has not been that great with the iPhone app. And so Hubitat actually has a built-in security feature. And so I think I'm going to work towards using that, where I'll just go and replace some of the contact sensors on the doors with smart ones. And then the bonus of that is it's only one set of equipment versus two. Right now, if I have motion sensors, I have to have motion sensors for the security system, but also motion sensors for my smart stuff. So if it's all built into one, which by the way, I should mention SmartThings does also have a security systems feature in there as well. But if it's all with one, then it's less hardware. I don't have to have two contact sensors on certain doors or two motion sensors in one room. And I also really like the fact that I'm going to probably use your guys' voice, because I did find out that you can have it so that when it's arming or disarming or the alarm's going off, you can have custom sounds or music or whatever. So obviously I'll have to have you guys being like, get out of Steven's house. A satellite is about to crash. Get out of Steven's house. The house will be destroyed in 30 minutes. That sort of thing.
Can you just put Schwarzenegger? Go and get to the chopper.
What were you going to say, SB?
Why would you want to get out of the house?
I don't know, because there's going to be a satellite that was going to come down and crash on the house.
Well, you're
the whole
screwed
point-
anyways, whether you're in the house or not.
That's true.
I think
That's true.
the whole point is trying to get you while you're in the house.
Yeah,
So
but-
stay in the house, Stephen.
No. This is though if a thief breaks in. That's what I'm saying. So if the alarm's going off, you want to give them a warning so that they get out, right? Because otherwise, if I see that the thief's in there, then I might not come home.
You are far more nicer to your thieves than we are in America.
Yeah, and actually, one little thing that I want to note about that, I found that Habitat playing those audio pieces, it looks like you can work by using the Amazon speakers, but they actually are very complex to get in working with the Amazon speakers. Like if I wanted to have that playing the voice, but they actually apparently work very, very easy. And I've confirmed this. I've tried it with the Google Home Minis, and that's because Google Home Minis have that Chromecast audio codec or whatever in there, and that's essentially what it's using. And it was really easy to set up. So I have a few of those, a couple of those kicking around that I've gotten from like a free Spotify offer or whatever here and there. And I don't like the Google Home Minis. I've said that many times, but now I got a use. I'll shove them behind, I don't know, a TV or something, and they'll be an extension of my alarm system or something. I'm not sure.
So, Steven, you've got all these plans and done these enhancements. Can you control your TV by voice completely still?
I don't think so. No, I don't think my cable box works well with it.
Oh, we found the next generation
There you go.
of what he's going to do.
So that's
There was-
kind of where I'm at with my setup. Either you got any comments or questions on that?
There was a comment in the chat that I want to go over. Kent asked what your electric bill is. And I will say that with all the LED lights that are inherently controlled by smart devices and smart things or Habitat or whatever, the LED alone saves you so much money that your electric bill actually is a lot less than it would have been 5 years ago. So all of this smart innovation is ultimately saving you money. That said, you are still getting some electricity into the smart switches that you're using, whether they're the plug-in switch that you were holding up that was the outdoor switch. I have one like that too, not one that you have, or whether it's in the in-wall, you have constant power going to them as long as they're powered up. So that is a little bit more power. Anyway, my point is the actual electrical consumption, which I am kind of big on after watching all these sailing YouTube channels, because they're all about trying to monitor and mitigate the electrical consumption. And by far, by the way, YouTube sailors consume more electricity than anybody else because they're always editing and they have all this camera gear and everything that they're using. By far, YouTubers are the worst violators of electrical use on boats, and they're doing just fine with all the LED stuff.
Yeah, LEDs make a big difference, like SP was saying. I fall down the YouTube rabbit hole. So one of those rabbit holes one time was people who build their custom vans to live in because they want to live off the grid or go around, how they'll put solar on the roof. And they all put LED lights inside because they're easy to control, because they can get smart solutions or remote controlled ones, and because they use little power. And what they mention in there is the stuff that uses the most power is my laptop or my TV or something like that. And like SP mentioned, they've mentioned that doing video rendering on their MacBook or whatever, it's power intensive. So a lot of these guys go to like Starbucks and plug in there and they'll do their video editing while they get a couple cups of coffee and then go back out to their van and finish up any of the remnants of stuff. It's really fascinating to see how this world where people are living with power constraints, be it in sailing or living the van life, stuff like that, have found workarounds and ways to put power efficient lighting in place.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, as far as actually electrical saving, like electricity savings go, I think the thermostats will pay for themselves for sure. Because again, keeping in mind, I had to replace several already. That was a must. Like, that was something on my list from last year, and I was always hoping for the deal that I got, which is why I put it off. But I think they will pay for themselves because of the fact that I've seen the savings happen when I've put them in, and I've seen the way they're running less and just sort of charted the electrical. The lighting itself, I think SP nailed it. LED lighting is very, very efficient, but I do also have kids that leave things on all the time. And I think the bathroom fan will also be a big help because of the fact that we were leaving that on quite a bit. And it's a small space with a heater in it that is running a fan pulling out the heat. Like, you know, so that it's as well, I think will. Some of the other areas, it's more about convenience and geek factor and fun factor. The garage, again, that there is a big convenience thing. And the bulbs, they were cheap. They were like $10 a bulb. So, like they're very minimal cost there. So, I really do struggle. I think it's a good question. And I struggle to say people will save tons of money by putting in smart lighting. But if you get the right, because once you factor in the hardware itself, but if you get the right deal on the hardware, I think you could, if it's a right situation where people are leaving things going. Like I said, that bathroom fan, that is a really good example on a complete loss of money. Well, it's a good question. And if you have any questions about any of this, or you want to know what I'm planning, let me know. But I just like to tinker. I like to have random geeky things going on. And I like the fact that pretty soon that my security system is going to be like that episode of Home Improvement where it'll be me saying the police are on the way, or whatever it was that Tim Allen said. I'll just go and take Tim Allen's clip. That's what I'll do. I'll just go.
You got to work on your tool man grunting though.
Oh, so you can't do it. Can't do it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up this episode. Before we go, Chris or SP, do you have anything that you'd like to plug or promote, Chris?
A bunch of great content on the Gonna Geek Network. Head on over to geeks.live. If you're watching this video right now, you might be watching it there. You can scroll down to the bottom of the page and see our calendar of live events. Kind of an important / interesting one coming up on Thursday, which I'm pretty sure SP was going to mention.
I was. In 3 days, we are going to be live recording the final episode of the Starling Tribune. That is because tomorrow it will be the final episode of Arrow, along with its after show. And so we'll be covering that and discussing that on Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. It will be episode number 263 of Starling Tribune, the final episode.
Can't believe it's coming to an end. So sad, but I get why you're doing it. To break my heart. I understand that.
I do everything for that reason.
If we would have known it was going to break your heart, we would have done it a lot sooner.
Then we wouldn't have had to watch season 5.
On that note, for episode 318 of the official GonnaGeek.com show, I'm Stephen John Drew saying I have myself a keypad for my security system, but it's not installed, but there is a green light on it.
I don't even know how to respond to Steven's lights. I'm Chris Farrell.
And I'm SP saying I need to go up to the ISS to make sure that we have LED lights installed.
Bye.
See ya.
CFL sucks.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the official GonnaGeek.com show. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts or a thumbs up on YouTube. You can always join us for our live recording sessions, which stream Mondays at 8:45 p.m. Eastern at www.geeks.live. And remember, you can find our full back catalog at GonnaGeek.com/show. If you're itching for more geeky content, check out other shows on GonnaGeekNetwork.com. Voice work was by Emily Prokop of the Story Behind podcast. That's it for this episode. We hope to see you back again next week.
All right, SB has to go. Chris and I will stay for a couple minutes, but yeah. One sec.
I don't wanna.
Yeah, no, it's like for me, I definitely look at convenience areas for lighting and stuff, like lamps and things like that too. And I also like colored lights occasionally. Christmas. What have you done? What do you have in your house, like for smart fixtures?
Light bulbs, the stuff to control the TV. I've got lights outside, lights in the basement, lights in the living room, lights in the landing, lights in the dining room. I haven't gone in. I only have one smart switch and it controls my exterior garage lights, and that's just set up on a dust. I've got it on a SmartThings timer for dusk to dawn. My stuff is nowhere near as complicated as yours. I have no motion sensors and stuff yet. I've considered doing that. I have motion sensors as part of my alarm, my house alarm. I do not have motion sensors as part of my smart home.
Yeah. I really like the SmartThings ones because they've got that magnetic back. It makes them really flexible for where you put them, and they come like here. You can see like the mount that's on there. Like that's just an adhesive mount, right? That's
Like
on
those
the wall.
command strip kind of things.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then it's actually I don't have one right here, but it's so there's a metal ball that's on that. So the sensor itself is just pivoting on that ball, right? Like if you go and you look at the side of my fridge here, right? You see I've just got that stuck to my fridge.
Yep.
But because there's a little knuckle on that sensor, it just pivots on that ball, and so you can really place it wherever you want it. It's remain dumber than a bag of hammers. The older houses, the challenge is when you don't have the neutral. Now, if you're looking for like a switch, now the nice thing is that there's actually a couple companies that are working to create neutral free wiring. The ones I put in the kitchen allegedly are. I almost did it for space reasons, but people say that occasionally you can end up with a little bit of, depending on if the load on that is not enough wattage, you can
Mhm.
sometimes see them flicker on because the way they're sending the power through, it's really weird.
Yeah, that wouldn't be great.
Yeah. Want to get a door sensor for my closet because I really dislike the stupid string. Yeah, that's an exact example on where I think SmartThing can be very functional is when you are having troubles doing certain things. Like the door that I should take a picture of it sometime. The door that I walk through to go to the garage, because of the shelf placement, I literally have to put my hand behind a piece, like a metal shelf, to flick the switch on and off. It was a pain in the butt, and it wasn't a problem before I had a dog because we rarely went in there. But you go with a dog, you cut through all the time. So,
Hmm.
but it's also, right up my alley. I like that sort of smart stuff.
Yeah, you have evolved far beyond what I was doing.
Yeah, so weird. So weird. The way that sometimes they build these houses, Suncast. I don't get it.
It made sense to someone
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we should go and shut things down. Thanks everybody for coming on by. We hope you had a fun time. If you watch Better Podcasting, I'll tweet this out tonight. We're going to be Friday, so it's not tomorrow. Let me just do that now, actually. For those that watch at Better Pod, this week we will record on Friday, time to be determined. This week we'll record on Friday, time to be determined. Okay. Yeah, so it'll be Friday. It'll probably be a little bit earlier. I'm guessing, like, how we often do when it's on a Friday, which is like 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern. It might be more like 4:30/7:30. Yeah, he froze. Yeah, SP. He's seriously studying. No,
seriously
he hung
intent.
up. He hung up. So it's his frozen picture when he hung up. I guess we should go.
I guess so. Good show tonight, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back for more shenanigans in a week. Shenanigans.
Do you have something you want to talk about in the segment?
Maybe.
We'll talk offline. That's fine.
We were talking in pre-show, maybe about what I was talking about in pre-show.
That'd be interesting to hear you talk all about.
I don't know if that's enough time yet.
Well,
so,
I think people would love to know about your first impression with those smart toys, if you know what I mean, for the bedroom.
well, I mean, I guess I could wear them in the bedroom.
Bye.